What's up? You are now listening to Americanized, a storytelling podcast where you'll hear from eclectic first and second generation Americans share their stories and real life experiences as children of immigrants. Happy holidays! What's up, Americanized family? Thank you so much for tuning in. And hesitantly, happy Kwanzaa. I say hesitantly, and we'll get into this. The roots and origins of Kwanzaa, including its problematic founder, Dr. Karenga. In this episode, my brain was stimulated as I chatted with Clara, a well-rounded Haitian-American who shares her experiences exploring different religions and observing Kwanzaa for a period of her life before she uncovered the haunting reality of Kwanzaa, the founder, its past, its what it's associated with, what it's the correlations, the history, and all of that, in which we will discuss in this episode. A few weeks ago on Instagram, on my personal Instagram, I shared a note, the new feature where you kind of just share a thought for the day, I guess. And I was like, just jokingly saying how Kwanzaa is coming up and I'm so excited. I think I said like, it's almost Kwanzaa, eh? And then I got some responses about like, oh, I didn't know you celebrated Kwanzaa. And I don't celebrate Kwanzaa. And then Clara was one of the people that responded to that note. And then we got into like, oh, Kwanzaa has great principles and all, but do you know about its founder and the background behind it? And I was like, no. And then, just thinking about the way I perceive Kwanzaa, which I talk about in the episode. And now knowing that there's a dark side to it, that became the birth of this episode. So if you're curious about Kwanzaa, definitely stay tuned and find out more.
So my name is Clara. I'm 28 years old. I am a Haitian-American poet, essayist, photographer, critic from way of Palm Beach, Florida. Was born in Connecticut, but grew up in South Florida. Deep interest in Black feminism and history, art, culture, the occult, horror. I love like what we find scary as a society. And yeah, very interested in religion as well. I am also in the LGBT community. And hold that to I'm very prideful of my identity, and that informs so much of how I move through the world, and think about the world and see the world. Although I'm recently now kind of divesting from a reactive mindset, and more so kind of processing, like, for example, I had an interaction last night with a white man, and he was like, we were talking about where I'm from, Palm Beach. And he was like, I love Palm Beach. It's not like Miami where those thugs are. And I was like, oh my God, what do? I'm just enjoying an appetizer here with my sister. Do I tell him why that's wrong? Do I entertain it? And I just sat there and I made a decision to just take that L that day. Yesterday, I was just like, I don't have the spoons to educate this man I'll probably never see again, but definitely more invested in, if I have the white relationships in my life, like entertaining those conversations, which are also far and few. But the white people that I do have in my life are allies. Anywho, I'm interested in racial dynamics, gender, sexuality, all that fun, juicy goodness. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. A lot of deep interest and passions and like hot topics as well. And I love that you said spoons. Love that concept of energy conservation, because getting into those conversations takes so much. Like, you have to be prepared and you have to back up so much that you
I know and
what
people are generally defensive when they're called out, and it's just like, it's just so much emotional work that I think of. One of my favorite authors, her name is Stacey Ann Chen. She's a lesbian Jamaican poet. And she has this quote. She was like, when I was younger, I used to be a sledgehammer. And as I've aged, I'm paraphrasing, she's like, as I've aged, I am a chisel and a sledgehammer. And like, just like learning when to be like meticulous with your fights or when to rage. And I feel like as I'm nearing my 30s, I don't have the same gusto or energy as I did in my early 20s and teens. And while I value that, and I think it's important, I think youthful energy is always important to like liberation movements and just a generative society, how our youth is doing. I'm also just like, yeah, I'm not old either. Like I'm, 28, very young, but already tired, done lived so many lives already, it feels. So yeah, I'm just like, okay, is it worth it to have this conversation? Is this someone that's going to be engaged? Do I even value, like, just going through the list of whether or not to engage. Whereas like, I feel like when I was younger, I was definitely like pop it off.
Anybody, any moment, anytime.
Ready to go off on like anyone that would reply to me on Twitter. They'd be like, they call me like the word on Twitter. I'm like, you. Now it's just like blog.
Yeah, it's a little easier on the internet to just block people. But now you have like this mental flow chart of, is it worth it or not? Or will someone else talk to them? Does it have to be me right now? So
I know.
There's that hope.
And sometimes it is you. Sometimes it does have to be you, but it's not going to be me. And sometimes it is me.
It's not going to be me.
Right.
I want to dive into the religion aspect because our main topic is Kwanzaa, which is coming up.
I know, and, the 26th.
Yeah, the 26th. So I've never celebrated Kwanzaa in my interpretation of it because my family's African, and everybody in my family I know don't celebrate Kwanzaa, which I feel like growing up, it was like, this is an African holiday. Everyone who's Black or African celebrates this, and me being like one of the few Black people in my growing up in my class, like, oh, do you celebrate Kwanzaa, Rosalind? No, I celebrate Christmas. My whole family celebrates Christmas. Or even like with other coworkers when the holidays come up, do you celebrate Christmas? Yes, I celebrate Christmas. So I never looked into Kwanzaa, like what it is, because I'm like, that's not.
No, right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way I thought of it is like, I don't think Africans brought this over. I think this is a Black American holiday where they're trying to connect with their roots. That's just how I thought of it. And I could be really wrong because I never did formal research on it.
Yeah.
So with you having celebrated it in the past, I want to know.
Yeah.
Like, just give it all to me because
Sure, I will. I've done some note taking, but I first off was baptized Roman Catholic as a child. So that already, like, the most common denomination amongst Black people in the US is Christianity, non-denominational. So to be a Catholic Black person, Caribbean, in Connecticut was really alienating as a child, but I also took pride in being Catholic. I loved wearing the little crucifix and, going to mass and having my little rosary and doing the prayers. And, I loved how prompt church was and, the smell of the incense. There is something calming about being in a like the stained glass windows. I love like the architecture of Catholic churches, but, deep, dark history of like 1500s during Spanish colonization of Hispaniola, now IET, Dominican Republic, France and Spain, as they invaded the island, brought the Africans to the island, killed the Taino population, instilled Catholicism. So there is a violent history with that. And, growing up, just always going to church and always being the only Black family. And I remember in particular when Barack Obama in 2008, around that time, that was like a tough economic time. Obviously, like our country was really desperate. We had finished George W. Bush, whatever the hell he was doing in office. And so there was that like, cynical but hopeful energy. But I remember our church was really adamantly against Barack Obama because he was pro-abortion. And that's not why my parents left the church, but my dad is, my parents aren't by any means like Black liberationists. I don't think they would identify with that at all. Like they didn't actually really raise me with any racial awareness. other in the sense of you are Black and you must be better than everyone because people are expecting the worst of you. But other than that, there weren't conversations about racism. But I remember my father being like, that was the last day for him to go to church. He's like, I'm not going to mass anymore, because like he was like, that struck a chord with him, just like, you know, them like being against Barack Obama. My parents are both very like adamant liberals, Democrats, vote in local elections, you know, but I myself am a Marxist. But yeah, so that was like, had that religious kind of weird limbo where, you know, I was 13, didn't really have like a spiritual guide. And during that time, my parents divorced or separated. They wouldn't divorce until years later. But yeah, so during that time, you know, started going to church with my friends and became a Christian, but never got baptized. I had a first communion as a Catholic, like 11, very exciting, little white dress, gloves, like that moment. And I always had moments as a kid where I felt like I didn't get what everyone was getting at church. I was like, why? I'm not getting the spirit. I'm not seeing it. I'm not feeling it. And I remember even asking my mother as a child one night, I was like, who are God's parents? And she was like, they're just things we don't know. And that's it. And, you know, there are a lot of Haitian people. I'm going to go all over the place. Let me try to be singular. I'm going to finish my thought and then go around. So yeah, my spiritual journey, like I was like, okay, became like Advent Christian. And for me at the time, it felt like a form of repression and reprieve, like going through familial issues and kind of feeling like, you know, not emotionally seen by my parents, wanting that spiritual outlet and having my friends all be in church and, you know, free pizza at church. And that's where all like the kids are hanging out. And I became a youth group leader, and I was a youth group leader up until like age 17. And that was like a moment where I remember like I was realizing like I was attracted to girls. I didn't have like the language for it, and was just feeling like the pressure and feeling kind of not seen by God. And I remember like everyone in my family asking me when I was going to get baptized and when I was going to become a Christian and, you know, leave Catholicism, because there's a lot of, my aunt is a like evangelical and her husband is a evangelical, and they go to Haiti often on missionary trips. And I'll have some conversations about that later. But so, you know, lots of pressure within my family. When am I going to accept Christ? When am I going to accept Christ? And I was like, oh my God. And I was at church, and there was a moment where a young girl was like, what is heaven like? And I didn't have an answer for her. And I just, as someone that is like, I am a student of the world, I think the Bible is an interesting book. There's so many literary, at least in American literature, references to it. I think it is an important piece that everyone should read. You know, there are don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, like great principles. I think that the message of Christ, a lot of Christians don't move very Christ-like at all, like, you know. And yeah, so I was just having some conflict, and I was like, I'm going to put this away for right now. And this just doesn't feel right for me. And, you know, 17, kind of going into discovering Tumblr, and which was fun and innocent at first, like pictures of the beach turned into like full on diaspora dialogue. And that was important. That was like enriching. And that's when when I was 17, I also started college. And my professor at the time, my humanities professor, Dr. McAllister, gay man, told us about his story about growing up Catholic as a Catholic usher boy and being gay and renouncing Catholicism and discovering Karl Marx, and a quote that Karl Marx says or said, which was, religion is the opiate of the masses. And that resonated with me. And I had felt like for a while I'd been, you know, looking for solace and relief, and I wasn't finding it. And I was feeling iffy. And, you know, my parents felt like they were really progressive growing up because they allowed us to wear pants, like me and my sisters. And because I have some girl cousins that grew up weren't allowed to wear pants, and, you know, that was like seen as masculine. And, you know, so they were like, you know, we're progressive, we let you wear pants. So having issues with the gender and misogyny within religion, and, you know, I myself not really ever really resonating with quote unquote femininity or subscribing to like motherhood. And yeah, so just asking all these questions, taking these humanities classes, going to a Buddhist temple for the first time and having like a vegetarian meal. Like, I'm a Buddhist. And then like someone from our class come in teaching us about Islam. And I was like, I'm a Muslim, like, oh my God. And just feeling spiritually touched and like, you know, feeling okay to let go of like a Christian label. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm agnostic. And then I kind of went into like atheism. And then I was like, oh, let me figure out Kwanzaa. Like, let me get into like Pan-Africanist religion, spirituality practices. And it was like, I feel like December 17, I had maybe just turned 18. It had to be 10 years ago at this point now. Yeesh. But I was just like, okay, I want to celebrate this holiday. And I remember seeing it briefly on the Proud Family when I was a child, like they celebrated it, but then like going as an adult and never going into the history or the founder or anything, just like loving the ritual of like also having had grown up in Palm Beach, and there is a large Jewish diaspora, and growing up with Jewish people, and like the menorah and the candle lighting, and even Catholic churches during Christmas do Advent. It's like during the month, it's like four candles. So loving that concept. And I was like, oh, this is really cool and neat. And I never got the candles or anything, but I was, I observed the days, and I would like tweet the days out and like hashtag it every year, and kind of fell off of it, maybe like, I don't know. I went through like, I think I always joke, and I'm like, I have a Hotep rising, because I love Hotepery foolishness, but also I think that Hotepness, or I now call patriarchal, like Pan-Africanist beliefs, are important for maybe a beginning for folks that are Black people that are just getting into Pan-Africanist beliefs, or, recognizing themselves like, hey, even though I am born in America, I am still an African. And, and it was always like a Pan-Africanist religion. It was never, or I guess like celebration or observation, or practice. I growing up, no one ever really asked me if I celebrated Kwanzaa or anything. I remember like maybe even like jokingly telling people like, what about Kwanzaa? Like, but, or like the little like red, black, and green beads, like penne pasta necklaces that like kids made when you're younger. But yeah, that's when I started. And it wasn't until like, I would say, so when you posted that story, you're like, oh my God, Kwanzaa's coming, that triggered a memory in me. A woman, I couldn't find her thread, but I found a lot of other sources for this information. But a woman was like, oh my God, if y'all are celebrating Kwanzaa, y'all need to look up, let me find the finder's name. God, if I could read my own handwriting, that'd be great. Ron Everett, who now goes by Dr. Maulana Karenga. They're like, oh my God, this man's like an abuser. He's a woman beater, like whatever. And I was like, word. So I looked on this thread that this woman had put together, and she had described how he had held 2 women hostage. And obviously, trigger warning, excuse me, before I talk about this, as we go into it. And that was like, wow, that really highlighted a lot. And even in my own artistic practice, I often talk about God and my own relation to religion, and honestly, religious trauma that I've had as like someone that experiences same-sex attraction in my family. And yeah, like, I don't know, it felt nice. And even like the symbolic 7 days of like from the, 26th to the 1st, and the 1st being Haitian Independence Day, and like a voodoo ritual being a part of our revolution and a part of our, success. And I think that, I guess we'll get into like the meat and potatoes after I go off this tangent. But yeah, I just got into it because I wanted to be more attached and in tune with my Blackness, but then also learn, disappointingly, like a lot of the religions that we have that are common currently are Abrahamic, in origin of the fact that like men think they're God, and this idea of like God is never gendered, right? And I know that even in the Torah, God doesn't have a gender, or a gender pronoun, I should say. But we have in our, at least Western society, visualized God as a white person. So I loved the idea of like Kwanzaa being this kind of born in rebellion, post like the Watts riots in 1966 of, Dr. Maulana being like, hey, we need something as Black people to know that like we have a practice. We don't have to celebrate Christmas. Like this is a religion that was enforced onto us by like other people, but we can also observe. It was a more of a, he also wanted to observe like the solstice, like the harvest of this time. And I know that's like common also in I might be misspeaking and I can't speak to this as much, but in 2019, visited Mexico City, and 45 minutes, I think either north or south of the city, there are the I would love a better word for this because I feel like it's so white centered, but ruins of like the pre-colonial, pre-Spanish, like of the indigenous folks of Mexico there. And there's the like a shrine for the moon and a shrine for the sun. And our tour guide, he was a native. He was explaining to us how the indigenous folks would worship the sun and the moon and the gods that brought them this, like the harvest, and one another, eating the fruits and preparing, and that those principles being brought to Kwanzaa, not obviously like way of Mexican indigenous culture, but like in parallel, in tandem. That felt exciting to me, and it being more of the body and less of the external spirit. Like I was like, oh, okay, like, and if you like, I'll read the days. So like the first day of Kwanzaa is Umoja, which is unity, which is maintaining unity as a family and community and race of people. The second day, I can't read my handwriting, is Kujaku, which is self-determination. Kujagulia, I can't speak. Self-determination, defining creativity, speaking for ourselves. The third day is Ujima, collective work and responsibility, building and maintaining our community, solving problems together. The fourth day is Ujama, Cooperative Economics, building and maintaining retail stores and other businesses to promote these ventures. The fifth day is Nia. Let me look on my phone. Okay, so yeah, Nia. Purpose. So working collectively to build community. And then the sixth day is Kumba, which is creativity and new and innovative ways to build communities of African descent and more beautiful and beneficial communities than inherited. And the seventh day is Imani, which is faith. And this is all Swahili. The belief in God, family, heritage, leaders, and others that will lead to the victories of the Africans around the world. So I guess like the principles, were really exciting to me and inspiring. But knowing the history of Dr. Maulana and like his misogyny and him like claiming, so he went to prison, he was incarcerated from 1971 to 74 for his crimes. And recently he went onto the Black Power Media podcast 8 months ago, and he spoke on the allegations, and he was like, oh, they never found me guilty for it, and it was the CIA. They're also Ann Coulter, right-wing, conservative, said that like Dr. Mulani is in with the CIA. And I'm like, if a right-winger is saying that about you, that's not a good look. Also, like, it's probably true. But my whole thing is, what would be the FBI's, like motive and intention of like, while I do believe in spiritual warfare, and I think that is a part of colonization, and like that is not to be like taken lightly. Like I'm also interested in why like a Pan-Africanist want but I'm not negating that as well, because the CIA did infiltrate like the Church of Islam, which also around the same time there was this. It's funny because I wanted to look up what was going on religiously in 1966 that people were called to, leaving Christianity, Black people. And like from the 60s onward, there's been a decrease of Black Catholics as well. But it seems that there's like Christianity within Black people. But Yeah, I was curious. And there was like a Time magazine article cover, and it was like, "Is God dead?" That was like the cover of Time. So I think of the 60s, and it's like World War II, the end of World War II. And like people just like, I think there's like this romanticization, at least in white America, and even in Black America, of like the 70s, of like, oh my God, it was a popping time. Music was popping. No, it was like a disparaging time. Like people were desperate for God. People were desperate for like some sort of like parentalness, it seems like. And I don't know, I'm interested like that his victims were Black, and it also drew me to Jonestown, which would happen 12 years later, 1978, where Jim Jones took 900 people to Guyana and killed them, convinced themselves to kill them each other. 50% of his victims were Black women, whereas 75% of his congregation that were attending the church were Black women as well. So I'm like, yeah, I'm curious to know, like, as a Black woman, yeah, like our draw to different religious practices, or and also like men exploiting our rituals and rituals that we're having with them, and or wanting to share and harvest. I don't know, it's all very interesting to me. And I'm at a point where I don't fault other Black people for celebrating Kwanzaa, especially if you don't know, but I'm at a place right now where I can't safely say like this is a principle I particularly like am going to bring into my life again. But I am definitely someone that loves lighting a candle and acknowledging my ancestors and building an altar and talking to God in spirit and soul. And, you know, especially like celebrating Christmas during this time. And I love that like Hanukkah and Christmas overlap. It feels holy. I'm not sure what religion, I mean, or if there's like a celebration right now, like in Muslim faith or in Islam, or, you know, but yeah, something about right now, winter time feels like ritualistic and time to gather within community and all that good stuff.
So many good points. You answered a lot of my questions along the way, but also raised up a few more questions too. The founder of Kwanzaa, he is Black American.
From Maryland, way of Maryland. His parents had 14 children. His father was a sharecropper. Then he moved to LA. There's not much information after that. And then like started like a group kind of parallel to the Panthers,
right,
where like two of his members murdered people, which is crazy. I also read from the Daily Caller that the 7 principles of Kwanzaa mirror those 7 principles of the Symbionese Liberation Army, who like robbed a bank and killed 2 people. Maybe that's the group. I'm not sure. Again.
Wow. So this is really an aggressive time, like coming up from the Black Power movement. So I can
yeah, for sure. I think that was a lot of the feedback, and within at least the Nation of Islam, that Malcolm X had for his name is leaving me, you know, the leader of the Nation of Islam. Maybe we shouldn't know his name off the top. But I know like him sleeping with girls that were young, you know, like teenage girls, and Malcolm X's, you know, his quote about how we treat Black women, and, you know, how we're the most disrespected population in the US, like came from it, watching the behavior of men within the organization. And I know Cantel and Pro, that was a lot of what they were negging on Martin Luther King, was that he was junior, that he was cheating on Coretta, and, you know, anything that. And yeah, there seems to be in the 60s, like a public thread of, you know, misogyny, like when the second wave feminism movement was just growing its buds, and women were definitely getting more class consciousness, and like you just see like, I don't know, the bimbofication of Marilyn Monroe and JFK, and then his brother are like hooking up with her, and I don't know, just like there's this, yeah, like I feel like the 60s, I can understand why women wanted religion or differences, or wanted a place in practice. the victims of Ron Everett, I actually never said their names. Their names were Deborah Jones and Gail Davis. That they were both living with him at the time, and he was in a drug-induced paranoid state, he claims. And got together with his wife at the time and some of like their male friends and like abused the women, tortured them. I'll leave whoever like interacts with this to look that up themselves. I'm not going to retell that trauma. But yeah, to have then claimed that it was like a psychotic break, and a psychiatrist confirmed that he was insane, but that's context. Like, I still think that's calculated, and he was thinking that they were like, CIA agents. It's so, I always think it's interesting how when men claim they're in their wrong mind or like, not right, it's always against women conveniently. It's we're the quickest bodies to find. So right. I'm like, I'm not sure. And in the video, he's like, oh, they said there was two. There's one, like in this video that on the Black Power Media interview. I'm like, is that even, so it's just because it's one, it's better. Like, one person, excuse
me. One woman? Oh.
One woman, just
does
one.
Not make it any
I know,
better.
Like objectifying. It's really gross. So yeah, I think such an interesting time. And
I thank you for shedding light on this, because there's so much behind it. There's so much history and knowledge that no one like as much as Kwanzaa is brought up to me, I've never looked into it, and now I know. Like, yeah, nope, I
know. Even when you Google Kwanzaa, it's not on there. It's not
I can't imagine.
Yeah, like, and I guess there is this, but then I think about it in a way of like, there are many people that practice religions that, I don't know, I don't think everyone agrees with, like Abraham or Muhammad or Jesus even, but is this man Jesus? Is this man Abraham? Is he Muhammad? Is he a prophet? And even, what is prophecy? And as we were talking today, I thought of, it's so interesting. I took a class recently with just an amazing poet and teacher. Her name is L.A. Warman of Warman School. She teaches a virtual, like different poetry courses. I've taken 2 with her thus far. The first one was Depression earlier this year, and then God. And he gave us a syllabus of just like readings to read. And in that class, like we just asked a lot of questions about God and what is God and the concept of God and who we talk to. And yeah, I don't know. I think of just like, I forgot who said it, but there's this quote and it's like, when God is male, the male is God. And I think that, yeah, there's just this, I wish that women were in the same vigor, like creating our own rituals and, taking into account our own practices. While I don't celebrate, like I don't identify religiously currently with anything, although I feel spiritual and, attached and in tune to that as someone that is a descendant of like, being Haitian, I will always have like a spiritual aspect to me. I'm really interested in, I just like lost my whole train. There it goes. I left. Yeah, just like women taking it on our own spiritualities and like, yeah, the image of Mary and Mary always being erased from the narrative of Christmas. It's always about Jesus, baby Jesus. Like he has a mother, like, it just like, I love like whenever I see like a Virgin Mary outside or like Guadalupe or like those saints, I always leave a little candle or, light a candle if it's there, like a shrine or, just do a little sign of the cross, even if I like, I don't know why, but just seeing that symbol of like, this Venus. And that feels like my spirituality currently, and my like religious and practice is just like very like female centered and worship and thinking of like birth and as cliche as it is, and people would critique others for it, but that feels more like in tune with Christmas is acknowledging Jesus had a mom. Jesus, like there was, there's so many aspects to Christ or Christmas or, I don't know. I can't even remember the whole origin story of Hanukkah at this point too. And I don't even know how I would tie it in. I'm not, again, like very limited Passover dinners and Hanukkah dinners with my friends, but nothing I can really speak to on the Jewish faith, but still admire it deeply and have deep love and respect. I'm curious about, where you are and how Christmas has been for you in the past and your interest in Kwanzaa this year.
So back to the new like Instagram notes thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, like I told you, trolling because there's been a lot of talk about Christmas, and then for some reason I just started telling people jokingly that me and my husband, we celebrate Kwanzaa, because I think it's just like a joke because it's
just like
white and I'm black, and it's like, yeah, we celebrate Kwanzaa now. I married a black woman, we celebrate Kwanzaa. We're black now. So I think that's but I'm not fully interested in you sharing the different days, and the principles and the message of each of those sound beautiful. You wouldn't think there's any darkness behind it or anything.
It's
and I'm like, it is. And then the Swahili language is interesting choice. I wonder where that's the East African.
Why that exists. It's so interesting to me because Haitian voodoo, a lot of it is derivative of Yoruba, like
Nigeria,
religious practices. And there's an amazing book that I'm meaning to finish for the last years of my life, but I will finish eventually, by Zora Neale Hurston, called Tell My Horse. And I've only read half of it. It's her experiences going to Jamaica and Haiti, researching Obia and Haitian voodoo. And she just talks about different rituals and marital rituals that they have in Obia and Jamaica. And I think of, like I literally keep brain farting. I don't even know where I was going with this, Rawson.
Oh, sorry, this happens to me all the time.
you can keep talking because I literally forgot.
But you asked me about Christmas, and so it's been like a default holiday. Growing up Christian, never dabbled into Catholicism. I have strong feelings about Catholicism. I'm like,
as one should.
It's very, to me, that's how I see it. It's very ritualistic, and the rituals that you do to get closer to God bring you further from God, because you're doing all these things to be okay with God and appease him, but it's like that's not even what he wants. It's not good works that you need to do. I always like to emphasize the relationship that you have, like even if you don't identify as Christian or any like I don't say I'm non-denominational. I just have that relationship, and it's like I feel spiritual about it, and I don't follow, I don't say rules and regulations, but rituals. Like I go to church as much as I can. I read the Bible as much as I can. I pray as much as I can, but it's not like you have to do this.
No, right. You're not imposing.
Right. It's more keep it genuine, keep it pure, like a relationship with anybody else, but more intentional and more like.
Yeah, because it's for you ultimately.
Right.
Like, a lot of, in my experience, at least within my family, what has always turned me off to practicing Christianity, although like my older sister is like a devout Christian and very faithful, and while we don't agree, I admire her for just always being open and also just moving as Christ. Like this is someone that does move Jesus-like, and and I admire that. I admire whatever practice you have, as long as you're integral and you live with dignity and you treat people as they want to be treated. Like I'm not going to fault you for like what brings you peace and joy and like community and fellowship. But yeah, it's when people are it's like when you're trying to touch my body and like tell me like, I can do this with it and I need to wear this and I need to be giving this much to the church every month, and the pastor's pulling up in a Rolls Royce and
right. Exactly. Oh, where's my money going? I thought this was for the church.
Right. Now he's going on his 16th mission trip to Bali this year.
What's going on? Right.
Yeah, and missionary trips. So I had mentioned briefly in the beginning, my family goes on mission trips quite frequently to Haiti. And my aunt actually has a church out there, Pierre Anguille. butchered that, but French translation, Cornerstone Church in Haiti. Shout outs, to church in Okai. And, as an adult, my trips to Haiti have been on religious excursions. That's the only opportunities I've had to go back to Haiti and have felt safe, when people, unfortunately, like, there is a lot of violence, and that's because of the US occupation of Haiti. And, but like, just, yeah, there's a lot of violence. So if they know that you're like with church, or it's like, oh, okay, like, there's a reluctance, I mean, they're definitely, I'm sure some folks are still getting seen for, but yeah, so that, and I also, I don't know, I remember growing up and like resenting going to church in the morning, like, at least when we stopped going to Catholic church and we would go to Pentecostal or evangelical church. Catholic church is 59 minutes and 59 seconds. You're in, you're out. Yep. Whereas like, evangelical church, someone caught the Holy Ghost and someone else caught the Holy Ghost, and it's beautiful. But I also sometimes would sit there and I'd just be like, I like feel bad because like I don't feel much. But also I remember there was a period where I was kind of like, I was on sabbatical in college. I had taken a semester off. I had had some mental health issues. And while I was home, my mom was like, of course, what is an antidepressant? You just need Jesus. So I was going to church a lot, but honestly found a lot of refuge and safety going to church, and kind of being a little rebellious and letting, like, asking questions during group. And I want, like, at the end of the day, like, I feel like, everyone, you should be able to hold your own. Like, I think that you have to get to a point in a time where you're like, okay, I can no longer just take on my parents' religion because that's what they gave me. What is my faith? What is my calling? Who do I talk to? What is the center in my life? And having those moments for yourself and being able to stand on your 10 toes. So it was really fun to like, be openly like I'm never rude at church. I love like music and the gospel music. And it's so interesting to me because Haitian people, especially Christian Haitian people, are extremely superstitious, and while in denial of voodoo, are always like, somebody's doing voodoo, somebody's doing voodoo. It's like, well, voodoo doesn't exist, but everybody's doing voodoo. So what's up? So what is it? Like, I don't get it. It's how it now has such a negative connotation, which I'm like, in my own personal life, trying to deconstruct. And I don't have a voodoo practice currently, but very interested in voodoo. But like, a lot of the worship is like, I'm like, they're not doing this at the white church. Like, it's still so African. There's tambourines, there's like drums and like just dancing and release, and that feels really cool. And I love, I'll go to church during Christmas and stuff. But then it always feels very performative. My mom's always like, go up there, ask the pastor to pray for you, ask them to pray. I'm like, oh my God, I don't need to do all that. But although, like, as long as it's innocent, I don't know. I have such a like, very, very, but I also feel like I am a child of God. I move with God and speak to God, and I think that it was an interesting phase in my life when I was atheist. I think that it was rebellious and it felt reactive to just being in such a polarized religious upbringing. And I'm like, I don't know, I don't want to put up a Christmas tree and destroy the planet for a plant that's going to be up for a day, or I don't know, just having fun with it. But then that also feeling so fleeting, and that excitement, whereas like, while I am such a firm believer in science and like the Big Bang, I'm also interested in, like, we also still don't have an answer for the Big Bang. We don't know why the Big Bang banged. We just know it banged. We have that proof. But like, like, that still leaves that interesting plane for hope and magic and wonder and godliness and fun. And
yeah, you make a really good point I want to touch on about, you do have to question authority and religion and like what you're brought up with. That way, when you do find your own, it's genuine, it's what you believe in, it's what you can make sense of. So that's a good point. And then when you say like voodoo, also that's I think I still stigmatize it because
of course,
it is.
how could you not? How
Yeah,
could you
like
not? There's been so much propaganda, one within our cultures, two within, well, one, like the whole genre of zombie movies comes from Haiti and Haitian folklore, and voodoo. And I can't quite tell you the exact origins right now, but definitely follow up and interested. Definitely am interested in horror, but like, yeah, you even think of Princess and the Frog being in like Louisiana, and I think of like horror noir. I'm always talking about horror noir, and there's a scholar, I'm not sure her name off the top of my head, but she has a PhD in horror studies, and she published a book called Horror Noir. You know what? Let me do this woman justice. I'm going to find her name currently, but she just talks about the origins of horror, and yeah, so voodoo has this negative connotation within like American film, and someone pointed out within, when you think of like Stephen King, who is one of the most American, if not most popular authors in the world, one of the most American coveted authors, who a lot of his inspiration, and they talk about this in horror noir, is from like, oh, this house was, or The Shining in particular. I think of The Shining. I love that movie, but a lot of it is Jack Nicholson's character being at this hotel that was on an like indigenous graveyard, and that being an aspect of the horror, right? These like dead black and brown people and their voodoo, and like, there's a movie called The Rainbow and the Serpent that's like about Haitian voodoo too. I've not seen it. And I can't speak on it, but yeah, I think that I was told growing up all the time to be afraid of voodoo, and, to be careful of magic, and you never know who's doing magic, and don't leave your hair around, and, you don't you don't know who has it. Like, there's just so much paranoia. And like, it's so interesting to me how a religion that helped liberate us, that like, kept our culture alive, that even the word for God in Creole is bon Dieu. And like, I don't know what the exact translation is like to English. I would even say like just good, like bon, like goodness, right? That is like of like voodoo, and like, yeah, it's just, there's so much that is integral to Haitian culture that cannot be separated from voodoo. I think we all still have a lot of work to do to demonize like voodoo. And it's really at stake. Like a lot of, I don't know anyone in my family that practices openly. Like, like there are little things that people will do that's just like little voodoo stuff that I'm even thinking the first time I ever menstruated, like I called my grandmother, like I was told to call my grandma, and she was like, drink lemon juice and tie a rope around your stomach for like good periods. And they wouldn't, like, that's voodoo, like that's like, and herbal medicine. Like my grandmother is 93, blessed be, and is diabetic, and like drinks these herbs from Haiti every day, and like orders them, like I don't even know what they are. I'm sure it's like, chamomile or something, but like teas. And that's part of it too. Like a lot of it is, it's so interesting to me because like a lot of voodoo was herbal medicine, and being people don't having access to medical care in rural Haiti, at least. Like my family is from the country. My mom's side is from Okai, like Kai. My dad is from Jacmel. So your priestess or your priest, like only having that being your medical care, and or them doing divinations for you through dreams. It's funny because Haitian people, Christians, they're like, I don't, practice voodoo, but my mom always be like, I had a dream, something happened, or like some inkling, and taking, dream messages very seriously. So it's always interesting the weird rituals that we do, even in Black American culture, like jump in the broom, and like, things, just like little knickknacks that are I'm so deeply interested in all of the Gullah Geechee people on like the East Coast, like in the Carolinas, like the indigenous African people as well, and their ritualistic practices, if they have any. Like I don't want to misspeak. And also like Louisiana voodoo, Cuban, like I don't know. That's my next practice. But again, voodoo is a closed practice. It's only for Black people. Like so, it's not you're not going to find it on Etsy. You're not gonna find.
That is so wow. Thank you so much for sharing that because it's really this. It's like the subtle things, like the herbal medicine, the teas. It's and I was having this conversation the other day about how it was after church. We came back from church and I was like, a lot of like the Western world and Americans are not spiritual the way Black people are, Africans are, or the world outside of
white
America. So the white, yeah, everybody else, but like you guys. And then you speaking about voodoo, it's like, well, that's just, it's all very spiritual. You see things in a spiritual way. It's not so much literal. And then when you look at the Bible too, it's not always literal. It's a lot of it is like spiritual or speaking, and you have to read them between the
parables.
lines.
Yeah.
Parables, like, yeah.
If your eye's causing you to sin, gouge your eye.
Like, yeah. Exactly. So that just opened my mind up to see voodoo in a different way. Because I'm like, I'm thinking of voodoo dolls and
I know
needles.
that's all like Americanization.
Yeah, it's been Americanized for me.
For America. But I'm thinking about The Crucible. Have you ever read The Crucible? Arthur Miller?
Yes. Yep.
So interesting to me. Like Arthur Miller's like, being a communist is like being a nigger. Like, no, it's not. You're not Tituba. Like, but like the witch hunt of McCarthyism. I mean, there was a true, hunt for communists in the 1960s, 70s, even now. But like, free Assata Shakur. That's what I'm gonna say. But she ain't do nothing. But yeah, I'm thinking about just the Crucible, Tituba, like just her doing voodoo in the beginning and her being from, she was Bahamian, I think, from Bahama. That learning that in class, like that Black figure, dark magic, even the word, I'm thinking about like how Malcolm X says, like, he's like, notice devil's food is chocolate cake. And like, there is that, like, the voodoo dolls. And even when you think of The Craft, that movie growing up, like, there hasn't been positive imageries of like Black witchcraft or Black paganism. Think of like maybe Harry Potter, like the Black characters being like witches and warlocks and stuff, or Twitches with like Tia and Clara. We love it. But like, there isn't positive, and that's another thing too. Like, if you have malicious intent, that could be regged up in any religion or practice. And also, the rules of three like apply in voodoo. Like, if you want to curse someone, that's fine, but a curse, you're bounding yourself to someone when you curse them. They're like, you're committing to being like closer to, that's tying yourself to them if you're cursing them. So remember that, like, there isn't a need for, while I think that I'm also pro bitterness and vengeance, and I think those are healing energies as well, and anger. They also aren't productive and aren't the core values of like voodoo. Like, there is one all being God in voodoo, and then like Loas, like minor gods.
I feel so enlightened, and
oh my God,
I love learning, and this is like good knowledge to have, especially in religion, because I feel like I limit myself when it comes to learning about, because I don't want to feel
you're like, I don't want to spoil my But then I think of, there's this Carl Sagan quote. I love Carl Sagan, astrophysicist who's now passed, but he's like, if it can be destroyed by the truth, it deserves to be destroyed by the truth. And I feel like if there is there are narratives, even in my own life, even as someone that doesn't necessarily have a spiritual concreteness, I challenge myself sometimes if I'm moved by a Christian quote or a Bible quote. I'm like, maybe that I needed to see that. Maybe that was a spirit talking to me. Maybe that was a message from God, like, and not closing myself off to those messages, or, so I think it works, vice versa. And I also, being opened as well, and not writing people off automatically. And
right, as long as you know what the truth is, you can be open to like seeing or reading different things. Like you
Yeah,
don't have to be
yeah.
completely closed off, but still knowing where you are in your religious walk or your spiritual world
Right.
is important.
Yeah, it is. I agree. I think that, yeah, I am excited by life and to learn and constantly learn. But also sometimes I've felt resentful of spirituality, and sometimes what it feels like robs me of my humanity in my, people looking at me differently because I am attracted to the same sex, or like, being told I'm going to hell for that, or like I ate the apple, like, or I'm tempting men by being alive. Like those narratives, I'm not, like, no, it's all a video game.
This is all video. No, there's so much to know, like so much to uncover and to discover.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of hidden stuff. I guess we could wrap up.
Yes.
I'm just gonna let everything, just gonna process.
Yes,
Lots to process. And I love your brain and your mind. You retain so much.
Oh my God. I love your brain and mind. I'm so honored and like pleasured to have spoken to you, and for you to contact me. And like I loved your episode with Mike. Yeah, I'm so honored. So thank you for your time.
I'm happy I met you. That was a good.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, Michael's like, oh, my friend Clara, I should meet. Oh, yeah. I think we should get an episode. You, me, and Mike. Just.
I would love that. Yeah, me and Mike are always like, we're gonna do a podcast.
Oh,
he's a better executor. I think that he's a better executor. I'll give him that. It's that Virgo sun action happening.
Okay, that makes sense. But no, you two, your conversations, I would love a podcast from both of you. Oh my gosh.
I'll let him know for sure.
That would be wild.
That's the Father Hotep.
Yes.
No, yeah, I really adore Mike. I love talking to him. He's the best. Me
too. Yeah.
I'm grateful for this connection.
Yes, absolutely. And he connected me to you, so very good.
Yeah, exactly. We love it.
I'm gonna have you end the episode with one final thing that you want to share with whoever's listening.
Oh wow. One final thought is just like be open to life's surprises and like be delighted in just like the simplicity. And that's coming from a Sagittarius sun and moon. I'm someone that like has struggled with feeling grounded, and I constantly always want to feel stimulated and want like, some sort of action, and fear boredom. And boredom is healthy. Boredom is good. It's okay to have a routine. It's like really that I've been leaning into, and I push onto people having routine, and also finding delight and simplicity and being surprised, and taking that extra time to make your coffee cute and take a picture of it and post it. Who cares? There are no rules. Like, just like living every day in the present. I had like a very tough couple of last years, and have really went through the ringer and like tons of like just like quarter life crisis, and really questioned my even purpose on earth and if I wanted to be on earth, quite frankly. And ultimately got to the decision of like, I don't know what's on the other side, and do I even really want to go, or do I just like want a better life? And cornely, like, the affirmations work, and journaling works. And, even if it's 10 minutes a day of just putting your phone down in another room, read something. And even if it's an article, and even if it's the back of a CD or something, like, I don't know, finding delight and surprises and being curious and assuming that everyone has positive or intentions, and we're all dealing with complexities in the same way, has allowed for me to be more forgiving of myself and others, and just take pleasure in normalcy and the small things.
Wow, I'm over here nodding like that. You really spoke to me. Thank you.
I'm glad.
Love that. That touches everybody else who's listening. It's everybody needs to hear that.
I'm glad.
Mm-hmm. This was really lovely.
It was.
I'm like, my mind is just, I'm so stimulated right now.
Let me know, round 2, part 2.
Yes, I will have you back for sure. This was good.
Yeah.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day and it's tomorrow. And then the weekend is here.
Merry Christmas to you. Happy Hanukkah. And maybe Kwanzaa too.
Happy Kwanzaa.
Tell your husband I said happy Kwanzaa.
Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Wilson.